I stood on the porch of the house I built with my scarred hands in 1987, heart-shattering as my son locked the door and said, "Dad, Vanessa and I made a decision. This is our home now. You can't just walk in whenever you feel like it." After 41 years of double shifts and sacrifices so he'd never know hunger, my only child locked me out like a stranger. If this story is already making your chest tight, you haven't even heard the worst part yet. Stay with me. What comes next will shock you completely. Be sure to subscribe our channel and get comfortable. My name is Gerald Mercer. I am 67 years old. I spent 41 years working double shifts at a steel fabrication plant in Columbus, Ohio, so my son could grow up without the hunger I knew. My hands still carry the scars from that work. My knees still ache every cold morning from standing on concrete floors. I never complained. Not once. Not ever. I planted every tree in that yard. I poured the driveway slab myself. I painted every room, repaired every leak, replaced every broken window without calling a single contractor, because money was something I respected too much to waste carelessly. And on a Tuesday morning in March, my son Caleb stood at the front door of that house and told me I wasn't allowed inside anymore. He was wearing the grey hoodie I bought him for Christmas 3 years ago. His face looked pale, almost sick, but his voice was steady. Controlled. Practiced. "Dad, Vanessa and I made a decision. This is our home now. You can't just walk in and out whenever you feel like it." I stared at him. My own blood. My only child. He had new keys in his hand, keys to my house, my name still on the deed. I drove to a Sunoco gas station 2 blocks from my house, sat in my truck for 40 minutes, and didn't cry. I wanted to. The pressure behind my eyes was enormous, like something trying to escape a sealed container. But I couldn't produce a single tear. I just sat there, staring at the steering wheel, my hand still gripping it at 10 and 2 like I was still driving somewhere. My wife, Carol, had been gone for years. Ovarian cancer. Stage 4, diagnosed in October, gone by the following April. 6 months. That's all we had after the diagnosis. Before she died, she made me promise something. She held my hand in that hospital room at Ohio Health Riverside, her fingers cold and thin, and she said, "Gerald, don't lose Caleb. Whatever happens, don't let anything come between you and that boy." I promised her. I meant it with every cell in my body. I had kept that promise for 4 years through everything. Through Caleb's moods, through his distance after the wedding, through every ignored phone call and rescheduled Sunday dinner. I kept showing up. I kept trying. But Vanessa Mercer, formerly Vanessa Doyle, from Westerville, Ohio, she had been building a wall between us since the day she put that ring on her finger. I didn't see it clearly at first. You don't want to see it when it's your son's wife. You make excuses. You tell yourself she's just adjusting, just nervous, just protective of her new marriage. By the time I saw the wall clearly, it was already a fortress. And Caleb was standing on the other side of it, looking back at me like I was the stranger. The saddest part? He genuinely believed he was doing the right thing. 3 weeks before the locks were changed, I received a phone call that changed everything, though I didn't understand it fully until much later. It was from a woman named Patricia Holt. She identified herself as a paralegal at Drummond & Associates, a law firm in downtown Columbus on South High Street. Her voice was careful, professional, almost too careful. "Mr. Mercer, we're reaching out regarding your wife's estate documentation. Specifically, a secondary amendment filed in 2019. We believe there may be a discrepancy that requires your attention." Carol's estate. Carol had handled most of the paperwork herself near the end. She was sharp, organized, determined to have everything settled before she left. I had trusted her completely. I signed what she put in front of me. That's what 43 years of marriage does. It builds a trust so deep you stop reading the fine print. I told Patricia I'd come in Thursday morning. She gave me an address and a reference number. That night, I mentioned the call to Caleb over the phone. Casually. I wasn't alarmed. I was just filling him in the way a father does with his adult son. There was a pause on the line. A very specific pause. The kind that isn't silence at all, it's calculation. Dad, you probably shouldn't go to that meeting without talking to Vanessa's brother first. He's handled estate stuff before. Marcus Doyle. Vanessa's older brother. A man I had met exactly 4 times, who looked at me at every family gathering like I was an obstacle rather than a person. Why would Caleb suggest Marcus? Why would my son redirect me toward his wife's family when I called a law firm about my own wife's estate? I didn't ask those questions out loud. I should have. I went home, made myself a bowl of tomato soup, and watched the evening news alone in the dark. I kept that Thursday appointment without telling Caleb. Patricia Holt met me in a conference room on the 14th floor, clean white walls, city view, a paper cup of coffee that had gone lukewarm. She was in her early 40s, professional, no nonsense, and she placed a folder in front of me without any preamble. Mr. Mercer, your wife filed a standard estate amendment in February 2019. However, we've identified what appears to be a codicil attached approximately 6 months before her death. This codicil creates a secondary trust, one we were not originally made aware of by the primary executor. I opened the folder. I looked at the document. The primary executor of Carol's estate was listed as Caleb Thomas Mercer. I had known that. Carol and I had agreed on it together. It made sense for our son to manage things. But the codicil, the secondary document attached beneath it, was different. Carol had specified that the family home on Brentwood Avenue was to remain in my name and possession for the duration of my natural life. Unconditionally. The property could not be transferred, leased, or leveraged without my written signature and consent. This document had apparently never been disclosed to me. Mr. Mercer, Patricia said quietly, the codicil was filed legitimately and is legally binding. However, we've recently become aware that certain parties may have been operating under the assumption that this document did not exist. I set the papers down slowly. My hands were trembling, but not from weakness. From something colder and harder than grief. Someone had hidden this document from me. Someone in my own family had known about it and buried it deliberately. And suddenly, those new locks on my front door looked like a very different kind of statement. I didn't confront Caleb that day. Not the next day either. I drove home, called my doctor's office about a prescription refill, ate a sandwich I barely tasted, and sat at the kitchen table in my rental apartment, the tiny one-bedroom on Morse Road I'd been forced into after the lock situation, and I thought for a very long time. I had been staying there 3 weeks. The carpet smelled like someone else's life. The walls were thin enough to hear my neighbor's television every night. The parking lot light shone directly through my bedroom curtain from 11 p.m. until dawn. 67 years old. Living in a stranger's apartment. Locked out of my own house. Carol would have been destroyed by this. That thought hit me harder than anything else. I called my old friend Dennis Rawlins, retired, lived out in Gahanna now. We'd worked together at the plant for 20 years. He picked up on the second ring the way he always did. I told him everything. The law firm. The codicil. The locks. Vanessa. Caleb's strange behavior over the past 2 years. Dennis was quiet for a long moment. Gerald. I need to ask you something direct, and I need you to think before you answer. Did Caleb ever ask you to sign anything in the last year or 2? Anything at all? Real estate forms, power of attorney, anything. I started to say no. The word was already forming in my mouth. Then I stopped. Last September, Caleb had come over to the house on a Sunday afternoon. He'd brought a manila envelope. He said it was a formality, something related to Carol's estate finalizing. A single signature page. He'd covered the top portion of the document with a sticky notepad before handing it to me with a pen. I had signed it. I hadn't read it. I trusted my son. "Dennis," I said slowly, "I think I need a lawyer." The attorney's name was Sandra Okafor. Office on Dublin Granville Road, second floor above a tax preparation place, not glamorous but serious. She was in her 50s, wore reading glasses on a chain, and had the kind of measured energy that made you believe she had seen every variety of family disaster and had not yet been surprised by any of them. I spread everything on her desk. The codicil from Patricia Holt's firm. The rental agreement I'd been forced to sign. Photographs I had taken of the changed locks and the new keypad Caleb had installed on the garage. Every document I could locate. Sandra read carefully. She asked precise questions. She never made me feel foolish for what I had allowed to happen, which I appreciated more than I could articulate. After 40 minutes, she removed her glasses and looked at me directly. "Gerald, based on what you've shown me, your son does not have legal authority to restrict your access to that property. The deed is still in your name. The codicil Carol filed specifically protects your right of occupancy. If he changed those locks without your written consent, that constitutes unlawful exclusion from your own residence." "What about the document I signed last September?" She looked back at her notes. "That's the part one need to investigate further. Depending on what that document actually contained, there may be grounds for fraud." "Fraud upon an elderly person, Gerald?" "That carries significant legal consequences in the state of Ohio." The word elderly landed on me strangely. I had never thought of myself that way. I fixed my own gutters. I changed my own oil. I walked for miles every morning until my knee started protesting last winter. But the law had a category for people like me now. And apparently, someone in my family had used that category as a target. "What do I do?" I asked. Sandra Okafor put her glasses back on. "We send a letter. Certified mail. And then we wait to see who panics first." The certified letter arrived at my house on a Wednesday morning. I know because Sandra told me she tracked the delivery confirmation herself. Caleb called me that same afternoon. His voice was different from the controlled, rehearsed tone I'd heard on the porch that Tuesday morning. This was unsteady. Brittle. "Dad. We need to talk." "I agree," I said. I was sitting in the plastic chair at my rental, window cracked, traffic noise drifting in from Morse Road. I kept my voice even. I had been practicing. "This letter." Sandra Okafor. "Dad, why are you involving lawyers? This is a family matter." It stopped being only a family matter when someone changed the locks on my house, Caleb. Silence. Long enough to fill a room. Vanessa thought it would help establish clearer boundaries. She felt like you were always. "Caleb." I stopped him. "I need you to tell me something, and I need the truth. That document you brought me in September. The one I signed. What was it?" Another silence. This one felt different. Heavier. "Dad, it was just a transition document. Estate paperwork." "What did it actually say?" It established Vanessa and me as joint property managers for the Brentwood Avenue house. It was supposed to streamline things. Vanessa's brother said it was standard. Marcus Doyle again. Always Marcus Doyle, working somewhere just behind the curtain. "Do you understand what you're telling me, Caleb?" My voice came out quieter than I intended. "You gave another person authority over my house. You covered the document before I signed it. You did this with your mother's name on the deed she never got to protect herself. I heard something on the other end of the line that I hadn't heard from my son since he was 9 years old and broke Carol's favorite lamp. He was crying. We met in person 4 days later. A diner on Cleveland Avenue, the kind with laminate menus and coffee that arrives without asking. Caleb came alone. That surprised me. I had expected Vanessa, or possibly Marcus, sitting beside him like a legal advisor at a deposition. He looked like he hadn't slept. Dark circles, a pallor to his skin I hadn't seen before. He'd lost weight since I last truly looked at him, which told me something had been happening in that house that I hadn't been permitted to see. He sat down across from me and couldn't hold my eyes for the first 10 seconds. Dad. I didn't know. About the codicil. I swear to you I didn't know Mom filed that. I poured cream into my coffee and said nothing. I had learned, late in life, that silence is often more powerful than any response you can offer. Marcus told us that Mom's original estate documentation gave me full authority over the property. He said there was nothing preventing us from taking over management of the house. I had no reason to question him. Vanessa trusted him completely and I trusted Vanessa. You trusted Vanessa's brother over your mother's legal documents, I said quietly. Not as accusation. Just as fact. His jaw tightened. He had paperwork. It looked official. It looked legitimate. Caleb. Marcus Doyle is not an attorney. He is a real estate broker with a 2-year community college certification. He had financial reasons to want access to that property. Have you looked at Brentwood Avenue's current market value? Something crossed his face. A dawning. Slow and terrible, the way understanding sometimes arrives, not in a flash, but in a sickening crawl. How much is it worth? He whispered. Sandra's assessment says $412,000. In the current Columbus market. Caleb set his fork down. He stared at the table. He did not speak for almost a full minute, and in that silence, something between us shifted permanently, in a direction neither of us had chosen. The next 48 hours dismantled everything Caleb thought he understood about his marriage. Sandra had filed a formal discovery request through the court. This forced disclosure of all communications between Marcus Doyle, Vanessa, and the property management firm Marcus had quietly registered for months earlier, a firm with a registered agent address in Dublin, Ohio, and Vanessa Mercer listed as a silent partner. The paperwork trail was specific and damning. Marcus had identified the Brentwood Avenue property as an investment acquisition opportunity. He had drafted the September document that Caleb brought me, the one covered by a sticky notepad. He had researched Carol's estate filing dates and calculated, incorrectly, that the codicil did not exist or could not be located. He had used his own sister's marriage as the instrument of his scheme. Caleb sat in Sandra's office when she walked him through the documentation. He sat very still, the way people do when they are absorbing information that is actively rewriting their history. Vanessa had known. That was the part that broke him. She had not been manipulated by her brother. The emails showed her as an active participant, suggesting timing, managing Caleb's responses, engineering the family conflict deliberately to isolate me from the property before the legal maneuver was completed. She kept pushing me to have less contact with you, Caleb said, his voice barely functional. She always had a reason. You were too controlling. You didn't respect our space. She said you undermined her in front of people. I believed every single word. I know you did, I said. I locked my own father out of his house. I stood on that porch and I said those words to your face. He covered his mouth with his hand. Dad. I am so. Don't apologize yet, I told him. There's one more thing Sandra needs to show you. About where Vanessa was last Tuesday evening. The color left his face entirely. The last revelation wasn't dramatic. It didn't arrive with raised voices or broken furniture. It arrived in a printed phone record and a restaurant receipt from a Paul Larry's area steakhouse. Vanessa, Marcus, and a third name. Dominic Ferreira. A property developer Marcus had been negotiating with for 8 months, during which time Vanessa had been managing Caleb's emotional distance from me with the precision of a project timeline. Dominic Ferreira had a signed letter of intent to purchase the Brentwood Avenue property for $390,000, contingent on clear title transfer by spring. They had planned to pocket the margin. They had planned to complete the transfer before I realized what document I had signed. They had planned to use Caleb as the mechanism and discard whatever damage remained. Caleb filed for divorce 11 days after Sandra's office. Not in anger. In a kind of devastated, quiet clarity that I recognized as the most mature thing I had ever seen him do. Marcus Doyle and Vanessa Mercer Doyle, she had reverted the name immediately, were named in a civil fraud complaint. The Ohio Attorney General's Elder Fraud Division accepted Sandra's referral. The process would take time. It always does. I moved back into my house on Brentwood Avenue on a Friday morning. Caleb carried my boxes. He didn't say much. We worked in the kind of silence that isn't empty, it's loaded with everything that cannot yet be spoken. When the last box was inside, he stood in the kitchen doorway. The same kitchen where his mother made Sunday gravy every week for 20 years. Where he did homework at the table. Where I taught him to make coffee at 12 years old. Dad, how do I live with what I did? I looked at my son. My broken, foolish, grieving, salvageable son. The same way I've lived with everything else, I told him. One morning at a time. Starting tomorrow. He nodded. He didn't look healed. He shouldn't look healed. Healing takes longer than an afternoon, and both of us understood that now in a way we hadn't earned before. I put the kettle on. He sat down. Outside, the yard I planted was beginning its first green push of spring. Carol's trees were blooming exactly on schedule, as if she had planned even that, from wherever she had gone, as her final quiet insistence that something here was still worth keeping.